Hey everybody, I'm Tanner Knight. Welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. And it's getting a little crowded in here. I've got the camera trained on this Yamaha drum set. This is the 5000 series from 1986. And of course, we've got, just jump over here to our superstars on the right side of the room. These are the Tama superstars from around 1980. But we've gone crazy and added a frickin' third kit. I've gone a little further up the scale of quality with a Yamaha series. This is a Yamaha 7000 series drum set. I just picked this up locally and it's in kind of rough shape. It's probably 1983, 1984 if I had to guess. I can hopefully rely on someone in this comment section to give me a little more clarity on what the badges read. But I went ahead and pulled the trigger on another drum set. The Yamaha 7000 series was their highest end drum series for a bit in the late 70s. This was before the 9000 series, or even the 8000 series for that matter, existed. So they started with this 7000 series as one of their higher end kits. By the time we get to the 80s, it's more of a mid-tier, kind of high end, the lower end of the high end if you want to parse it that way, because it does have natural wood, and you can see the wood grain here. We'll get into that in a second. We do have the Yamaha made in Japan tom mounts, very nice. All of the original hardware except for the claws. I gotta find a set of 20 claws that have the square edge instead of the round edge. As you can see on the 5000 series, these are a square-edged lug. So that's one thing that's a little bit of a bummer, but we do have the original T-rods and lugs and hoops, so that's good news. This set came with this Paiste Alpha, say medium 14-inch hi-hat, as well as this Paiste Rude crash ride cymbal, which is a 20-inch, and it came with this crappy little drum throne. The Tama Iron Cobra double kick pedal. That's kind of a surprise for me because this is the 900 series of Iron Cobra, one of their highest end pedals that they made at the time. And we have this really, really crappy snare. This is unbranded, or at least if it was branded, it has since been unbranded, but just a regular crappy old steel snare. Looks to be 6.5 inches deep by 14 inches. These heads are just whipped, and I don't know, this is a Yamaha batter head. Looks like it's probably the original Remo head. And then we have the Rezo head acting as our batter head here. So we got some work to do. I don't want to play this kit as is for you because it just doesn't sound good right now. But if you understand the potential of the Yamaha kits from the 80s, then you know what this thing is capable of. And I'm going to spend some time cleaning it up, lubing up all of the rods, and just making this a much nicer playing drum set. We'll get a nice set of Remo heads on here, and yeah, we'll call it good. So this is the newest acquisition. Let's get to work. All right, since we've got these two drum sets here to compare, let's take a look at the similarities as well as the differences between the 5000 series from 1986 and the 7000 series from earlier in the 80s, starting with the spurs. These are extendable or retractable, whatever you want to call them. And they do have a threaded sharp bit here that acts as the point of the spur. So keep that in mind. And then our attachment here is pretty basic. Just kind of one position for activating it, and it doesn't have a transport position. Whereas if we take a look at the 7000 series, this has a 2-position mount like this for when it's engaged, and like this for when it's transported. And it has these grooves that are actually cut right into the actual mount. And yeah, nice system, really nice hardware, chunky wing nut. This is also retractable, but you can see that we don't have this dial, this threaded insert here. It's just a point that appears to be affixed in there just kind of permanently. But semi-retractable and dual position mount. As for the lugs, they're identical. I like to call these the wedge style lug. Not exactly sure if they have a better name than that, but they are, you know, a wedge, like a triangular solid. That's definitely the case here too. Same exact lugs and tension rods. Like I mentioned, the claws are different. If you take a look at these square claws, they're slightly different. So that's kind of the one difference here, but I think that's due to this drum set going through life and getting parts swapped out as necessary. The most obvious difference between these two sets is the fact that we do have a natural wood outer layer here, and we do have a wrap on the 5000 series. Nice wrap, very nicely done, but it is a PVC wrap. The tom mount is identical. This is the same exact tom mount branded Yamaha as we find right here on the 5000 series. So no differences there. This actual mount for the toms is a Tama one, so it's not comparable. I don't have the original Yamaha mount for this set, but this Tama one works well. Unfortunately, we can't compare them though. The rack tom mounts are identical. Same wing nut, same mount, same hardware and everything. I would say the one spot where this kit comes up short is the floor tom feet mount, or whatever you want to call these mounts here. This is a tiny little wing nut, and I don't know, it just isn't ideal. It's a very small little mount for these legs. These wing nuts are prone to back out and mess up your tom height. So when you go to the 7000 series, you get a much nicer wing nut here and a beefier mount overall. So slightly different there in favor of the 7000 series. Here we have a close-up of our Yamaha bass kick badge. It does say BD7220, which is the 7000 22-inch variety. And it's actually not a 0, it's a GA at the end here. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it does appear on every single one of these serial numbers. The more interesting thing to me is that it only has a 2-letter serial number after the model. IJ is what it says. 2 letters. Just for reference, if we take a look at the later 5000 series badge, you can see we still have the same kind of naming scheme, TT513GF. So that means that this is the 5000 series, a 13-inch tom, and then we have a much longer serial number over here, including that 2-letter code. This one seems to be HI or something like that. But then there's a 4-number scheme after it, which there is not on the 7000 series. And trying to get an inside shot inside of this clear Remo head to see the bearing edge and the inside, which I assume will be very, very similar between these two sets, because even though they are different woods, they were created and made the exact same way, using the same forms probably. But you can definitely see that the inside of the 7000 series is a bit more beautiful. I think this inner layer is the layer of beech, and you know, it has its own character, but it's not as pretty as what you'll see in a second. Again, we have a clear, well, this is a Rezo head on top of here, but trying to get a good shot of the wood grain. Hard to say. We might have to wait until this head is off to see that, but it's dark and it's pretty and it's just well made. So this thing is really dusty. It's kind of dull as far as this wood goes. So I'm going to take every single screw apart, every lug, every nut, you name it. We're going to take it apart, and I'm going to polish this wood shell with a little wood shell wax that I have, and see if we can bring back a little bit of that luster. This isn't what I would call a lacquered set. I think this is more of, I don't know, just like an oiled set. It doesn't seem like it has the thick lacquer that, say, the Superstars do or the Recording Customs. So let's get this thing apart. All right, so this is a really good look inside of this bass drum. This is what they all look like, the floor tom, rack toms, and the bass drum. Just a quick around for the bearing edge. Always difficult to see what the bearing edge is, but this is what I would call a rounded bearing edge, not very angular. But the inside is just gorgeous. Here's our telltale diagonal seam, also present on Tama drums, but Yamaha utilizes this manufacturing style as well. This wood is called Camellia, apparently. Hey folks, Editing Tanner here, sorry to break in, but I did discover after the fact that the Camellia wood is kind of unique to the 1978-79 era of these drums. That's when these drums were made in Taiwan, not Japan. So before 1980, we're in the Taiwanese factory, but 80 plus, I believe, or 81, somewhere around there, we're in the Japanese factory for all of these drums in Yamaha. And when they switch over, they drop the Camellia wood for this line of drums and move over to a birch. So I think the birch layer is probably the outer, and the inner layer, that is not very easy to discern based on information online. And in fact, the only way that I figured this out is because I found the Japanese 1982 catalog for Yamaha drums, and it's all in Japanese, so I had to get out my phone, point the lens at the Japanese text, and Google translated it for me. And it did say that it was birch and Meranti. Meranti is another word for Luan or Philippine mahogany, so you will see those words kind of used interchangeably, but it is that Philippine mahogany that kind of gets a bad rap, but I think is actually a very good tone wood for drums. And you'll see the Imperial Stars from Tama, the Royal Stars, the Swing Stars, the lower end drums from Yamaha, the 7000, the 5000 series, etc. utilize this wood, and it's just not a bad wood. So if I do mention Camellia wood moving forward, just know that I was incorrect at the time, and I've since learned that it's now birch with Luan or Meranti. But it's also Luan or Philippine mahogany, so I think that most of these layers are probably that Luan, with the outer and inner layer, maybe more, being that fancy Camellia wood. All right, let's take this thing apart. These bearing edges just couldn't be any better. They are perfect on all shells. So just take a look and know that all bearing edges look just like this one. Beautiful. So I've got this product, Feed and Wax Wood Polish and Conditioner, that I use on drums pretty frequently and have had pretty good success. So I'm not gonna hit this with a sander. I just don't think it needs to be sanded down a little bit. I'm gonna buff it with just a rag, and then I'm gonna apply this and buff it in with my buffing wheel. So hopefully we can get a little shine out of this. Let's have at it. Something I like about these Yamaha shells is you do get a badge here and here. So two separate places so that one can be facing out and one can be facing in as you play. Just a small little thing that I noticed, but I think this thing is ready for its first coat of wax. Okay, I've got all 4 shells waxed up, and the way this stuff works is that you gotta leave it on for about 20 minutes. It penetrates into the grain of the wood and conditions, enhances color, enhances shine, and when you buff it, it has a pretty hard finish, similar to a lacquer, but you know, it's not a lacquer. But that's what we're gonna be going with this drum set. You can do this for 2 or 3 layers, and I may, depending on the outcome of the initial buff, but now we wait, and I'll give it a few minutes, and then we'll come back and buff. Okay, it's been 20 minutes, so let's go ahead and wipe off the excess. and then we'll give it a quick buff. All right, I'd say this thing looks a ton better. So we're gonna go ahead and do this treatment to all of them, and yeah, then we will maybe put them back together. Beautiful. All right, what a sexy finish now. I don't think I need any more coats, so I'm gonna call that good. And let's do a quick wipe down of the inside of these, and yeah, let's put them back together. All right, all 4 shells are good to go. These are some of the lightest shells that I've ever picked up. So that's one of the benefits of not having birch. Birch is very heavy, maple is very heavy. This one is pretty light. All right, let's get some new heads and lube up these tension rods and put this thing back together. All right, so I was able to pick up some new Evans heads. We have, what are these? The EC2S, the clears that I've never played before. So that should be something fun, but they are supposedly similar to the Remos in construction, the pinstripes that is. So we do have Evans all around. I put a new batter head on this kick as well. It's an Evans Level 360, a black one to match the front. The rest of them are clear. As far as the Rezo heads, I decided to keep the best condition heads of all of them for the Rezo heads. So those are not ideal, but they're okay. I mean, they just have to not mess up the sound too much. So I think this kit looks really great. It feels nice and high-end now, and it's back in working order. So before we go ahead and hear it, I'd like to compare it against the sound of the 5000 series and see if there's any appreciable difference between these two kits with pretty similar tone woods. The main difference between the two being that the 5000 series is wrapped with a PVC layer. And the way Yamaha does their wraps, they are tight. There's zero chance that any air can get in between there and the actual wood. So it's pretty much like an outer layer of wood, just PVC. So let's go ahead and hear that. We'll swap them out and roll with this kit for a little while. Okay, we won't spend too much time behind this kit because obviously we've talked a lot about this kit in the past, and those videos will be linked in the description below if you'd like to check those out more in depth. But let's talk about some more differences between these two sets. We've talked about the shell material, the PVC wrap. Let's talk about the sizes. We do have a 12, a 13, a 16 by 16, and a 22 by 16 inch kick. So keep those depth measurements in mind. This is a 12 by 10, a 13 by 11, and a 16 by 16. So it's not straight up square sizes like power toms like you would find from Tama, or I even believe Yamaha had some true power toms with square tom sizes, but these are approaching that with 12 by 10, 13 by 11 depth, whereas the 7000 series has a much shallower depth. We're dealing with 12 by 8, 13 by 9. So you're losing 2 inches of depth. That's something to listen to for the toms. Otherwise, the shell construction and material is pretty spot on the same. We do have that extra fancy layer in the 7000s and the layer of beech in the 5000s, but let's go ahead and hear this kit and get that baseline sound, and then we can go from there. Capturing the sound today, we have an SM58 on the snare, which is my DW Design Series black chrome snare. I love the snare, really just kind of versatile all-around rock snare. Now, I'll just keep that the same for the purpose of this video, as well as the cymbals. We don't need to hear those cymbals just yet. I'll do a separate video on the Paiste cymbals, so we'll keep everything same. Zildjian 18-inch crash and a 22-inch ride and a Zildjian Master Sound Custom A hi-hat. Zildjian is my preferred cymbal brand for the most part. I don't have too much experience with the Paiste stuff, but they do seem pretty nice. So we'll swap them out and I'll do a separate video on those cymbals. On the snare though, microphone wise, we do have an SM58. On tom number 1, we have a PVM 328 tom microphone. And then the last two here are SM57s on the medium and larger tom. In the bass kick, we also have the complementary PV microphone, the PVM 321, I think is the kick drum. And it's a really nice kick microphone. It's buried in the head, as you can see, which is nice. We have the same kind of configuration for the 7000 as well. We can put the microphone right inside the head. So no overhead mics. I usually like to have some overhead mics in the mix, but for this purpose, we're listening to close-up sound, so I figure we'll just have close-up microphones. And these cymbals are loud enough. They'll bleed in, so here we go. Okay, so that's the 5000 series kit. Let's go ahead and swap it out with the 7000 series. Again, we do have the same general sizes, 12, 13, 16, with a 22-inch kick. The depth on the 7000 series is actually a 22 by 14, so another slight difference. This one is more cannon shaped, a little bit longer to match the little bit longer toms that we have on the racks. Okay, let's go ahead and get this drum set in place. All right, drum set in place. Played it a little bit, just a couple minutes, and it sounds really good. Obviously, the very first time that you tune up some drums, they come out really easily, and it takes a little bit of kind of bedding in, kind of like strings on a guitar. But let's go ahead and hear what this setup now sounds like. Everything else stock except for the shell pack has been replaced with the 7000 series Yamaha drum set. always personally gauge a drum set based on how fun it is to play, because at the end of the day, we do have to play it because it's enjoyable. And this kit is absolutely every bit as enjoyable as the 5000 series. Is it more enjoyable to look at? Absolutely. I love real wood, and whenever you have an actual wood outer layer for your drum layup, I think that's a plus. However, I also know that not all wood is very pretty, so the need for a wrap exists because wood isn't always this pretty. So yeah, the 5000 series with its Philippine mahogany or Luan, I just hear it's kind of a gross looking wood that nobody would really want to have on the outside or even the inside of their drums. So that's why a lot of companies like Tama, they use the Zola coating, and in Yamaha's case, they put a coat of beech on the inside of their kind of mid-tier kit. With regards to this one, there still is Philippine mahogany in the mix, but we do have that Cambria layer on the outside and the inside to make it look a lot nicer. But does it sound better than that 5000 series kit? I don't think so, not yet. And I think that that's mainly due to the fact that I gotta bed these heads in. They're just a little tubby right now, and maybe it's due to the fact that these are Evans heads. It shouldn't be that way. They can't be that different. But we do have a little tubbiness, especially in the rack toms. I like the 16 by 16. I very rarely come across a 16-inch tom that I don't like. And this one is just deep and loud, and it dies pretty quickly, which is kind of what you want, or at least what I want. This one dies much quicker than this one. I don't have any mutes or gels or anything on this kit right now. It's just kind of stock without any muffling. There is a small pillow inside the bass kick just going this direction. So that's doing a little bit of muffling, but I found that to be absolutely necessary. These heads were just reverberating like they were in a massive warehouse with nothing to echo onto. So having that pillow in there takes a lot of those weird overtones out of the mix and makes it a lot more pleasant. I still see a couple wrinkles in this head, so it's possible that I can tighten it up a little bit and get some better tuning on these, but like I said, they come out of tune pretty quickly the first time you set them up. So I'm not terribly worried about being very scientific with the tune at this point. Once these heads bed in, maybe about a week of playing, then that's typically when I'll get the tune bot out and try to put a specific note on the reso and the batter head. So that's what we're looking at, but I think that's all I've got in me for the moment. This was a long day of taking this thing apart, cleaning it, putting it back together, and making it sound this good. It's, I think, 8 p.m. right now, and I'm ready to call it quits. Whew. But that's the Yamaha 7000 series YD-7000G and with an MIJ serial number. So there you go, another made in Japan drum set. I love these 80s made in Japan drum sets. I don't think you can go wrong whether it's Pearl, Yamaha, Tama, or even into the 70s. You can start getting some really great stuff from those same companies, but the 80s is really my favorite era in Japanese drums. And I find that you can get a lot of value outside of the Recording Custom series, even the Superstars from Tama or the Pearl Masters. You don't need to go that route. If you can and you do, then great. More power to you. I have a set of Superstars right behind the camera, but I love checking out all different types of drum sets, and this is one to chalk up that I've never tried. So let me know if you have any questions. Please like and subscribe if you like this type of content. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one.